So, the first day of work, and so far my plan is working pretty well. So the idea is to construct a tower of farms, where instead of spreading the automatic farm out, I could just build them on top of each other. So step number 1 is to first locate and dig out a chunk. Step number 2 is to design and plan each farm out and its layout. And step number 3, and lastly, gather resources and build the farms. And since I already found the chunk, half of step number 1 is already done. So all I need to do is mine the chunk out. Conveniently, I can also get a lot of my resources from mining the chunk out. I finished mining after 6 days of work. Took longer than I expected, but it's finally done. Before I build the chest room later on, I'm going to build an iron farm since all my automatic farms and chest rooms will need iron in large amounts. For the design of the farm, I'll use my own farm design from my first video, which is kinda nostalgic. Building the iron farm was pretty difficult. I had a friend of mine dig a tunnel from his underground villager breeding hall to my project just to get some villagers. It took me quite a long time, but I did manage to get a zombie into the farm. In total, the iron farm took me around 3 days or a combined 2+ hours to build and decorate. Okay, so now I need to build a chest room to store all the resources I'm going to get from these farms. I plan on having it look nice and also be able to auto-sort the items. The plan is to build it below the iron farm where I left plenty of room. This should allow me to place plenty of chests, although I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. So the redstone for the automatic sorting is actually quite easy to build, but I think decorating the chest room will be a bit more difficult. Since I finally finished building the iron farm and the first chest room, I'll dedicate some time later to write a list of farms that I can build in this chunk. It's been some time since my last entry, and I've learned quite a bit about redstone during my time away. The first 4 farms, except for the bamboo farm, which will use a flying machine, all use a variation of a design with some tweaks in between. The design involves an observer placed on top of a piston that is placed on top of a block. The observer and the piston are then linked up using redstone. Once something like sugarcane grows tall enough, it would then be detected by the observer and the piston will break it. Lastly, it would then be collected by some sort of hopper mechanism. I am dumb, so I started today by building the lava farm by using a design using rails, but that was a massive waste of space, so I had to entirely scrap that idea and rebuild a different version of the lava farm that used pistons instead, and that was great. The cobblestone and the basalt farm were both pretty easy to build since I had prior experience with them. I might get a beacon to make the cobblestone and basalt farm more efficient though. I built the bone meal farm today as the last farm I build underground. This pretty much means I will have to build an enclosure for every farm after this. I based the design of this farm on a Mars farm, but I went through massive pain to make sure this farm fit in the chunk, so it's really a miracle that it even functions. I also made a snow farm in the small space below the bone meal farm. I found out that my chest room is almost full recently, so I decided to create an even larger 2-floor chest room as the entrance to the farm above the bone meal farm. In case this one also fills up, I made an automatic disposal system that fixes any clogging issues. I spent a few hours building the wood farm and enclosed it in a pixel art of a tree. I originally had a design that was smaller, but it wasn't able to work with any other wood type than oak, so I made a larger and more complicated version that fixed that issue. Then after that, I also built a flower farm. It didn't take very long for me to find out that running the flower farm lights my PC on fire. I built a potion farm today, which is the most interesting farm I've built so far. It's pretty much an automatic potion farm that is able to brew 3 different types of potions depending on the configuration. I built an enclosure that looked like a Minecraft potion brewer for it. I created a few designs for the netherwart farm, and while the one I ended up building wasn't the most efficient, I still ended up going with it. I didn't do any fancy enclosures, so I just decided to use spruce and deep slate. I think my PC is now permanently on fire. Since the basic design for one sheep farm is actually pretty basic and small, I built a bunch of them. This means I have to put a lot of sheep into the farm, therefore causing a lot of lag. Instead of building most of the farm as I go along with the project, I planned the entire build out in a separate creative world before the build. After that, I spent some time gathering the necessary bees and beehives for this project, which took me a few days at work. For the enclosure, I created an open design with deep slate and yellow glass to make it look like honey is dripping down. And while it does look really nice, I think it does waste some potential space that can be used for another farm. But I think it's worth it. I can't believe building a chicken farm would, at least in terms of the time and effort I spent designing it, be more difficult than pretty much everything else. I even crashed a Minecraft world because the chicken farm got too laggy. It was slightly easier with the cow and pig farm. There really wasn't any automatic way to breed the cows or the pigs, so it's most likely the least automatic farm out of all the farms so far. I spent most of today collecting sand for glass for future farms and the honey farm since I'm out of honey bottles. I must admit that the mushroom farm doesn't look the best, but the redstone and the mechanics are pretty interesting. I spent 2 hours building it, and well, hopefully creepers won't spawn in it. I also added a fish farm in it since it had plenty of space for a small one. I found a pretty cool melon/pumpkin build on Reddit a few days ago, and since it works pretty well, I used it as an enclosure for the melon pumpkin farm, which easily fits inside. However, since I only had a low quality photo to use as reference, it was kinda difficult to replicate it. I decided to build a mostly glass enclosure that would house the carrot farm, potato farm, wheat farm, and beetroot farm. They all use the same design, just with different crops. Building it was, while tedious, very easy, but getting the villagers into the farm was the hard part. I think the sweetberry farm has one of the best enclosures. I used a lot of moss blocks and leaves with spruce logs, which then, with large glass windows, looks like a greenhouse. The farm was moderately easy to build with little redstone since most of the farm is automated by foxes. I discovered a disappointing problem today. I spent an entire day designing the enclosures for the cactus farm and the creeper farm, modeled after their smaller counterparts, but in order to fit them in the height limit, I had to reduce the height of one of the farms. So I decided to shrink the cactus farm. But I think this actually makes the cactus farm, at least its enclosure, act as a stand for the creeper farm, which I think improves things a lot visually. Today, I finished building the last farm for this project. I chose the enclosure to look like an upscaled version of a creeper, but building it took a lot of resources and time. I also had to build the gunpowder farm inside, which I designed after multiple attempts to find the best one. Originally, the design used to require cats to work, but I found out that the farm worked even without cats. And so, the project is done. After 168 days of work and literally terabytes of footage, I'm finally done. And now that it's fully built, one can really admire how big it is. This build works really well and I couldn't be more proud of it. And honestly, the memories that I have made over the course of building this project will be with me for the rest of my life. I'm very grateful for those that were there for me, and thank you. I went through several different edits and just ended up running out of time. And that's it. Thank you for sticking around till the end, and if this video gains enough views, I might upload a separate video for tutorials or more behind the scenes in building. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.